Hello, I'm Jeremy Allaire, and welcome to The Money Movement, a show where we explore the issues and ideas driving this brave new world of digital currency and blockchains. So, accelerating adoption of crypto is raising significant questions about how it can play a role in improving the economy at large. Not only does crypto have a diversity problem, it also is woefully misunderstood in broader communities, including communities of color. And now, as we enter this new era of the Biden administration, from a financial services and fintech perspective, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is going to be focused on delivering results and improving financial opportunities for underrepresented communities. How can crypto transform economic opportunities for people of color everywhere? Joining us this week to explore these issues and more is Cleve Mesidor, founder of the National Policy Network of Women of Color in Blockchain, a Washington insider. She served as an Obama presidential nominee, a senior staffer in Congress, and the leadership of a number of national political campaigns. She's also author of The CLEVOLUTIon, My Quest for Justice in Politics and Crypto. Welcome, Cleve. It's wonderful to have you here today.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So much we're going to talk about today. I'm very excited for this conversation. I want to start actually a little bit with your story. I love to start with people's story, and specifically, your journey here, your journey into crypto, the intersection of the themes that you've been talking about, and we're going to touch on your book. But I want to just start maybe with your journey here, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I've watched the work that you're doing at Circle, so keep up the great work globally and in the US. But I love to start like this because in the crypto space, we underestimate how much our stories, our journey into this space matter to people and actually help to actually bring people into the fold. But I first learned about cryptocurrency when I was working in the Obama administration as a political appointee. In 2013, a friend had a Bitcoin project and asked me to help him. And I learned about Bitcoin, help with the project. It was interesting. Then I saw the movie Dope. Some of your audience may remember that. I love that movie. And so it was still interesting, but didn't really motivate me until about 2015. 2016, the conversation expanded beyond Bitcoin. And it actually shifted to the possibilities of the technology, intellectual property protections, identity management, privacy. I'm sure your audience is wondering where the accent's from. I am actually from Haiti, from the Caribbean. I was born in Haiti, moved to the US when I was 8. I was raised here. But when you think of things like self-sovereign identity, that actually matters, in the Caribbean, where so many people don't even have ID. Yeah. So that's the journey that brought me into this space. So when people say, why are you here? I say, I'm here for the economic revolution. We know so many people across the world. I think 1.7 billion are unbanked or underbanked. So for me, that's the prism I come to crypto. It's looking at it as a technology, a currency to help solve some of the problems for the communities that I can connect back to.
Yeah, that's really profound. I have my own small Haiti connection. I spent a lot of time studying and learning about political change in Haiti. I met Jean-Bertrand Aristide and The Paris of the Poor. His book was obviously a really influential book for me a long time ago. But so that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I think this connection to people who need economic transformation is such a profound part of this. And I think, a lot of what has drawn a lot of people into this industry, into this movement, has been the belief that, digital currency and blockchains could bring more people into the economic system and enable more people to participate in that. And I feel like you're obviously in the heart of the beast of policy there in DC. There's a lot of passion for these issues, but it feels like a lot of policymakers, political leaders, they don't really connect to that. They don't really understand that. And I'd be interested just at a high level to hear, how you talk about that. If you're sitting down with a representative in Congress and they're saying, isn't this just a bunch of, dudes trading and making money, speculating on this thing, and isn't this just, a criminal thing, or, the classic, FUD? How do you respond to them, and how do you connect to this more fundamental set of ideas that you're pursuing?
Yeah. I think for me, I actually think as part of the crypto community, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work we have not done in terms of educating people. For myself, it took me 2 years to get this thing. And I publish a weekly newsletter. More so for me, it goes out to thousands, more so for me just to keep up. So, this is a hard thing to understand, which we know, and that's a big barrier to adoption. Yes, I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked for 2 members of Congress. So, and I actually focus on the Tri-Caucus, the Black Caucus, Hispanic Caucus, and Asian Pacific American Caucus. And their prism, the lens that they view crypto through is illicit use of crypto. That's what they've heard about. And, when you look at big tech and these communities and these members who represent communities of color, they think of crypto like big tech, right? That they have to protect consumers from it. So what I try to do is I try to demystify crypto, and I try to, soften the language of crypto, right? We all love the story of Satoshi, but quite frankly, it scares the hell out of, elected officials. And we need to remember in crypto that most of the members of Congress, the majority, probably 70% of them, if not 75, are over 70, over 60. So therefore, it's not a matter of age, it's a matter of the relationship with money, right? So their relationship with money is different. And so, so for me, I approach it from the conversation about, money is more inclusive when we have the most options available to consumers. Right? I share basic definitions of cryptocurrency and do not go into technical definitions. And I also, don't focus on the members, right? The members will only take you so far because they have so many priorities with leadership.
Yeah.
Where we need to do a lot of work is with congressional staff. Again, legislative assistants juggle multiple issues, so they don't have the time to sit here and hear you tell them they don't understand it. So it's really, so with members of Congress and their staff, I try to find out from the financial services side, what are their problems? What are their issues? How can I help them, solve or bridge the gap with some of the problems they have? Then they'll be more likely to say, okay, Cleve, let's talk about this crypto thing.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, today is a significant day because it's the start of a new kind of comprehensive Democratic Party governance in Congress and the White House. I think we the progressive wing of the party and the moderate wing of the party, both I think care a lot about financial inclusion. They care a lot ultimately about the kind of infrastructure development. That's a big theme that I think people care about. Competitiveness of the U.S. workforce. What do you believe the critical themes are to be focused on in educating members of Congress and in particular, of course, the staff? What do you think the key themes are that we need to focus on?
Yeah, it's a new day, a new Congress, a new administration. This is the most diverse Congress and the most diverse administration ever. And we have a lot of new members who are very excited. And also a lot of the regulatory agencies in the executive branch, their leaderships are changing, right? So for me, we have to look at this thing from the crypto community has to be less aggressive. The biggest challenge for the executive branch and the legislative branch over the next 4 years, over the next 2 years, will be economic recovery. We need to demonstrate, how does crypto fit into economic discovery? We can't come at it, oh, this will solve, this is the solution, this and that. We have to look at what is, the financial plan. Biden has announced, this $1.9 trillion plan. We know where Congress is going with legislation. So if we stay focused on economic recovery, and if we look at the buckets of economic strategies that they have, and we look at opportunities for pilots and working groups, and look at opportunities to actually integrate crypto in a way that's non-disruptive. I know it goes against our nature, but for Biden, the COVID and the economy will definitely bog him down, for members of Congress as well. So for us, if we can't, fit in where they are in, it's going to be very hard to even have the conversation. I know some people are upset that Janet Yellen, indicated that she's concerned about illicit use of crypto. That's the lens they're looking at. And in Congress, it's all about relationships, and it's all about building those relationships. And we have to do better at that. And once we build those relationships, once we actually help them we have to come up with the solutions of how we fit into this economic recovery conversation, then things will be a little smoother, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think there are a couple of important lenses here. I think one is the sort of investing in the next level of infrastructure for the country, which is a really critical piece to make the country more competitive, to ultimately make the economic system itself ready for the 21st century, to use a kind of cliche. And I wonder if that can become a key part of the message, which is, hey, this is blockchain infrastructure, digital currency. The opportunities it creates is going to be the foundation for the global economic system. We need to make sure that the best opportunities exist in the world for doing that here in the United States, not just happening in China, not just happening in other markets that are being more progressive with this, and really kind of help the administration and Congress understand that.
Yeah. I think you're right on. Infrastructure is a priority. And if you remember, when Trump first came on board, there was a lot of talk about an infrastructure bill. Right. There was a lot of talk about doing this, but then the bottleneck happened, right? Once there's conflict, nobody's going to give anybody a win. So the infrastructure bill never materialized. We have an opportunity here. And you're right, this infrastructure bill, I remember when we came into the Obama administration, we had to figure out how to create jobs. And we added innovation and entrepreneurship. So as we're looking at an infrastructure bill, it's all about creating new innovation jobs. It's all about empowering small businesses in different ways. So these small entities that hire, less than 5 people, making sure that they have the tools. And I totally agree. That's a direct way where we can actually talk about cryptocurrency. Basic things like making sure that small businesses can actually accept cryptocurrency, and in a way, and we have the infrastructure already in place in a way that is very low risk to them. But also in terms of making sure that these, jobs we invest, these new jobs we're creating, that there's funding for training about financial literacy training and workforce training around cryptocurrency. Those are well within, the purview of the crypto community to collaborate.
Yeah. I see that as well. I think, as you've kind of come through this journey, I'm actually interested, just coming a little bit back to your own story. Talk a little bit about the book, about some of the critical themes that you explore in the book. And I would maybe just start there, and then I want to dive more into some of the kind of diversity and inclusion issues that face this industry and relate to policy issues as well.
Yeah, so the book is about my quest for justice in politics and crypto, which is the name is the CLEVOLUTION, which a friend came up with. It wasn't me, but it's really about this fusion of these two, these two different, spaces that I come from. I have a deep Washington background, worked on Capitol Hill, worked for the Obama administration, worked on national campaigns. Crypto is new. I, again, first introduced to it in 2013, got immersed around 2015. So it's interesting. These communities are very, very different. I'm sorry, very, very similar. I swear to you, the craziness of Washington, how polarized and siloed it is, and how, people form different camps. Oh my God, crypto is exactly the same way, which is one of the reasons why it's very hard, Washington and the crypto community tends to talk at each other instead of with each other. But the book focuses on these experiences because for me, whether it was, in politics or now in crypto, social justice and economic justice is what I'm focused on, right? So I even remember when I worked at CNN, I went to Howard University. I'm repping Howard because our vice president is a Howard alum, so we're happy to be on the map. But I remember when I left Howard University, I went to work for CNN's Washington bureau, which focused on politics. And I remember Frank Sesner was our bureau chief at the time, and I had a conversation with him. And he talked about media being a public service. And I remember thinking, yes, that's why I'm here. And when I went into politics, it was about a public service. Mm-hmm. So it was frustrating in politics, right? Because there was a lot of problems we could not solve. You can't legislate some things. You can't write a bill to solve some things. Like, so when I left Washington, it was because I wanted to be part of the other side. How do I make these changes that were so difficult from a legislative or regulatory perspective? Crypto has allowed me to, be a revolutionary, be a disruptor, and actually, now reach back and say, hey, here are some of the solutions and leverage some of the relationships. And so those are some of the themes. But a big part of it is obviously my journey from being born in Haiti to moving to the US and integrating into the US. But also, I talk about being, an entrepreneur, right? Being part of the new small businesses in America, which are these micro enterprises. And I talk about, I even talk about, the PPP loan. We, good intentions, but the federal government has to start thinking differently about what a 21st century small business is. Mm-hmm. Right. So when we look at micro enterprises, innovative enterprises, the PPP was the first effort to actually try to integrate, independent contractors, startups, entrepreneurs. They even, allowed fintech and banks to participate. But that's an area where we have to do better. I've met with the Small Business Administration, the House Small Business Committee. They're excited about innovating, especially things like the 7A loan program. We have to do better to actually make sure that as we actually go into this innovation economy, that small businesses, micro enterprises have what they need to be resourced and successful. So that's a short synopsis of some of the stuff I cover.
Oh, very interesting. As you think about this kind of communities of color, financial inclusion, and crypto, what do you see as the primary ways that crypto can be a positive capability for these communities?
Yeah. So obviously, when we talk about financial inclusion, we're talking about the 1.7 billion globally, right? We're talking about the 55 million here in the US, right, who are unbanked or underbanked. But that is just the baseline, right? So financial inclusion is not the goal. It's where we need to be just to level the playing field. That's where we have to go back. We have to go beyond that to economic opportunity, economic equity, and even economic justice. One of the things I love to muse about is what is the problem crypto is trying to solve? And going back to this relationship with money, depending on where you are in crypto, your relationship with money, that will actually inform how you view the technology and how you're building on it. So for me, coming from, a community of color, coming from an economically disadvantaged community, I grew up in New York City, I grew up in Queens, my for the most part, they were probably middle class, but, the challenges I want to solve relate back to financial inclusion.
Mhm.
I love the idea that we can leverage crypto to actually fit some of that gap, to bridge the gap. Crypto can actually give access to financial services in a way that the traditional system did not.
Mhm.
But I will say, when you look at where we are right now in the crypto community, where we've actually been successful in doing this is abroad, right? Where inflation is high, where, Venezuela was a great case, right? Argentina and others. I know Circle has a footprint globally, is doing some great work. And so, there are some places where crypto works. Again, you see a lot of focus on the continent of Africa because, again, Brazil, India, because of this issue of inflation. It's very difficult here where cash is still king, where people really still, have confidence in the traditional financial system. So, I guess that's my long-winded way to say, we still have to demonstrate that crypto can actually bridge that financial inclusion gap. And we have to look back at what are some of the projects we're building, right? There's so much focus on, Bitcoin ETF. As a person who early on owns Bitcoin, was on an early big, I'm all for that. But when you look at the marketplace, the needs of the marketplace, or even the priorities of today's consumers, in crypto, we have to invest more in terms of educating, in terms of financial literacy, and also in terms of outreach and engagement. The space is in its infancy. So, we put too much pressure on us as a community, but the space is it's in infancy. And so sometimes we forget that the whole world doesn't know and love crypto. We forget that the whole world doesn't sit at conferences talking about, all of these, technical aspects of it. So we have to do a better job to connect to the marketplace and financial inclusion. We need to do better.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you related to that is, with financial inclusion and creating economic opportunities, I think part of the very specific, sort of approach that Bitcoin itself presents is, is as essentially as a savings technology. It's a way to sort of, put savings into something that is non-inflationary, that kind of gives you a way to store value that's not just traditionally in the banking sector. And I think for many individuals, people can take some amount of their savings and do that. You're now seeing obviously the BlackRocks of the world, the Fidelities of the world, big institutions, huge amounts of, even, insurance companies, other things that are starting to do it. But part of the democratization of this is that this is something that you just need to download a piece of software, or if you get Cash App, you can put $50, into this and safely store it. And so I wonder, from an education perspective and a financial literacy perspective, does the crypto community need to do a better job educating people where the idea of buying something like this and holding something like this as a savings technology might be really alien to them? Because they're certainly not hearing that from their community-owned bank. They're not hearing that when they go to down the street. But these are, communities that actively use every advanced technology that there is. They actively are, using all of the advancements of the internet. Do you think that that's, do you see that as a key goal for us in terms of education?
Yeah, I think store value is one of the aspects that's most interesting about crypto, right? And that's why you mentioned a lot of the financial services companies are in. Fidelity was early in, Jamie Dimon has turned around. And then you see, PayPal, and definitely Cash App. So for me, I tell people, especially, when people do think of Bitcoin is the way to attract people in, right? It's like
Yeah.
the sexy thing to get them in, right? But we have to be concerned about that as well too, because we don't want to steer people to Bitcoin, which has a high price. I tell them Bitcoin is like, you can put Bitcoin on layaway, right? You can just buy a little at a time. But we don't want people to lose their savings or to lose, the little money that they have, which is why the financial literacy comes into play. So for me, when I talk to people, I encourage them to buy cryptocurrency. Because Bitcoin is so sexy, I encourage them to start with Bitcoin. I actually point them to Cash App because most people have a Cash App account.
Yeah.
I tell them buy $25 worth of Bitcoin.
Right.
Because no one's going to be upset if they lose $25.
Right.
And we know they're not going to lose $25. But at least once they see a return, they'll increase that. I actually know somebody who, he actually first learned about cryptocurrency during an event I did for Black History Month on Capitol Hill. And this is a great story. He shared the story that, he got enamored by Bitcoin. He works for the federal government, so I won't say which agency. And during COVID, the government allowed federal employees to actually be able to take up to $100,000 out of their federal account. He actually took $100,000 and put it into Bitcoin. So like 2 weeks ago, he called me and said, thank you. Because when Bitcoin hit 40, he bought Bitcoin at I think when it was like $4,500 in March. So the store of value is exciting. But we have to talk about it differently. We have to encourage people to buy $25, which is a hard thing for people in crypto to do, because we're just like, that is ridiculous, right? They should be smarter. I remember during the Obama administration, one of the biggest successes his first term was people who donated $25. They donated $25. They showed up it's a volunteer every day. They knocked on doors because that $25 is precious. But going back to the financial literacy piece, and that has to go hand in hand with the store of value, because cold storage is important for people to understand, right? Because they can do Cash App for a while, but that only takes them so far because of the limitations. So we want them to get to a point where they understand how to hold their own keys. They understand, the difference between buying crypto on PayPal and versus an exchange, a traditional exchange, or even how to actually, hold their own crypto through cold storage. One of the projects I'm working on is to create a financial literacy product, which would essentially be a certificate program. The goal is to work with financial literacy centers. There are tons of them in the communities we need to hit. So we don't have to build the infrastructure. These financial literacy centers are already teaching people the difference between paying for a banana, between paying with $1, a credit card, or a check. They teach them. We need to add the crypto to that mix. So this product would be a certificate program that the financial literacy centers would actually administer. And once their participants, their patrons complete it, they get their first wallet. And they get $25 on that first wallet. So they go into it at least having a basic knowledge about cold storage, because the certificate program would focus on cold storage. And so as we actually get people to focus on store value, buy crypto, this is a good way to actually start integrating the conversation about cold storage into the mix.
I mean, I think that's a powerful way to go. Education in that way is really powerful. And I think for a lot of people, the concept of being able to kind of control your own store of value, not have it be something that can be sort of seized from you, the independence that can come from that, and otherwise it can be quite powerful. But it's a lot to learn and take on for sure. I want to come back to one of the themes that you've touched on, and obviously is a major theme for you, which is, just the diversity problem in crypto, right? So women of color in blockchain, you're at the forefront of driving greater diversity in the blockchain ecosystem. I would love to hear a little bit about that work, but also, this is a big problem, right? We need these communities to reflect the diversity of the world we're in. Some might argue that will happen automatically as this becomes a mass market technology. But I also think as an ecosystem, we have to be intentional about these things. I'd love to hear about what intentions you think need to be there, and how do we keep addressing this?
Yeah, it's very important. The burden that crypto inherited from big tech is the fact that big tech is seen as not inclusive, not diverse, and also that they don't want to be inclusive or diverse, right? So in the crypto community, we have to push beyond that, because if we actually repeat or allow ourselves to be branded with the moniker of big tech, members of Congress and the administration are not going to take us seriously. And they're certainly not going to advance another industry that will actually keep people of color out, right? So, this effort to actually get smart regulatory policy, it means that crypto, we have to make sure that in our workforce, we actually reflect, the demographics. We're not, as an advocate for diversity, I'm not asking for any special favors. HBCUs, I'm a graduate of Howard University, has spent the last 2 decades creating a pipeline, right? We've had, Black and brown people go to all of these universities to learn about tech, right? And we know that right now, Blacks and Latinos make up about 40% of the US. So if they're not represented in your workforce, it's not because you can't find talent, it's because you're actually excluding 40% of the US population. And that demographic issue, is not an easy thing to fix, right? Because, and we know that. And, but as you said, we have to be intentional. And so one of the things that I'll share is, that has been great is crypto companies, especially large crypto companies, working with HBCUs, right? So, but what happened was, I think Ripple started working with Morgan State. Morgan State grew this big, infrastructure there. So now everybody goes to Morgan State. I get contacted about Howard. Howard created a lab, and now everybody wants to. There are so many HBCUs around the country.
Right.
So one of the ways,
the big names, right? It's sort of, it's got to be everywhere, right?
I would say that, one of the things that we don't pay attention, we don't talk about enough is the regional growth of crypto. So when I do events with women of color on Capitol Hill, I bring women from all over the country, because members of Congress want to know that people who look like them from their congressional district are building there. But from the diversity perspective, that is one way that the sector, most of the leadership or the people who control the money are probably in New York and California and DC for the most part, because of the regulatory piece. But when you look at Ohio, right? When you look at even Atlanta, oh my God, when you look at Miami, Chicago. So what you're seeing there is grassroots, bottom-up growth, right? People in these communities, Ohio is a big one, but they have Congressman Warren Davidson and others to support them. But when you look at, people are building grassroots communities that large corporations can tap, right? So if we're looking for partners, you don't have to keep going to Harvard and Princeton. Harvard and Princeton are great. Howard and Morgan State are great. But look to some of these communities where
it's a really strong point. I think it's a really strong point. I think partnering with HBCUs and the geographic diversity is such a big piece of it. And what's been interesting, I mean, Circle's been growing a lot, and with the pandemic world, right? We're fully remote, we're fully distributed. And, if you go on our site, like we list many of the jobs are just remote, wherever you are. So we're hiring people all over the country and in different parts of the world. And so I think that creates an enormous opportunity to improve diversity and inclusion. Talent is everywhere. If you are in the echo chamber of New York finance or Silicon Valley software big tech, you're gonna you're going to self-select into a set of communities that have established there. But if you go broader, there's incredibly talented people everywhere, and just tremendous opportunities to bring people in. And so I think this remote work absolutely should be a real call to action for organizations to, with intention, improve their diversity. Absolutely.
And if I can interject one more thing, internships continue to be important, right?
Yeah.
We think, it's the 21st century, internships are just like, no, internships is where we've actually seen a huge divide as well the inequity exists that actually is a barrier to, to having more diverse workforces in tech and even in crypto. Internships are choice opportunities. And for the most part, they typically go to children of wealthy, donors or investors.
Sure.
Even on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C., Howard University, over 150 years in Washington, D.C., it has been hard to even get interns to Capitol Hill because Capitol Hill it's not an easy place to intern. You have to, move here, and even if you live here, you have to have housing. So it's an expensive proposition, one that mostly wealthy, college students can afford. So we've actually worked very hard to figure out how can we ensure that we get more Howard University interns on Capitol Hill. Again, recognizing it's difficult because there are barriers, but I know Kristen Smith at the Blockchain Association is looking at, an internship program for her member companies.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, again, it's hard. We have to be intentional. One of the ways is to make sure that your internship program has diversity and is intentional about promoting that. And so if you can look at your intern pool each year and not see it reflect the demographics of America, then you have a problem. Then you need to do more, because a lot of people focus on the lack of diversity at the leadership of these large corporations, tech or any corporations. I focus on your entry-level employees and your mid-level employees, because that's where because if we're going to level the playing field, they're going to enter through these positions. And that's where we have to make sure there's a pipeline. Entry-level jobs, mid-level jobs. And if we look there's not enough diversity.
Yeah, it's a great recommendation for the industry. I want to just touch at a very high level on sort of your big picture thoughts, and it's in some ways it's sort of my last question, which is what's your dream? Where do you hope to see things in the next 3 to 5 years? Specifically in terms of crypto and blockchain and the broader intersection of politics and crypto and communities of color. What would success look like? What would it look like in 3 to 5 years? And that's roughly the length of the Biden administration. So you can maybe talk about it in the next 4 years.
Yeah. Oh my God. So what would success look like for me? How would I define success? Well, I do think that I do want to see more intention about diversity within the crypto within the crypto communities, especially with large employers, right? I would love for Coinbase to finally recognize that they have an issue and even acknowledge that and act, because you can't solve you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. And they don't know they have a lot of people who'd be willing to help them if they would just acknowledge that they have a problem. But regardless of Coinbase, I think every company should do that, because as you mentioned, Biden, I talk a lot about the decade of women. Women of color are very much responsible for Biden's win. That is why you've seen his administration is so diverse. Yeah. So the Biden administration is going to expect crypto to be diverse if it wants a seat at the table, right? So we need to address the diversity piece. Again, it's hard. We have to be intentional, but there are partners and allies that want to help with that. I would definitely love for the crypto community to be more intentional and committed to education and training. We're so excited about this space. We wanted to, we want mainstream adoption, but we're not going to the basics. We have to step back and figure out the language of crypto and start doing basic education, basic training. It's not sexy. It's probably not gonna yield anyone an immediate return, but we need, a big example is a new Congress is in place. Typically what would happen if it wasn't COVID, the first month would be when, constituency groups would come and meet with new members, try to educate them about their issue, share a packet.
Yeah.
We can't even agree on a definition of crypto, right?
Mm-hmm.
This thing is a technology, it's an industry, it's an asset class. We can't go to the consumers or elected officials with this level of grandiosity, right? So we have to figure out, invest in education and training. Mm-hmm. And so for me, that would be a greater success if we were just as focused on education and training as we are about getting a big Bitcoin ETF passed. And I would say, like everybody in crypto, I want mass adaptation, right? I want mainstream consumer adoption, right? So what does that mean? Unfortunately, the regulatory piece, we're going to be back down for it because, again, Washington loves, whenever anything's making money, Washington wants to figure out how to tax it, how to regulate it, right? So we can't help that. But, when you think about where we have opportunity, again, globally, adoption globally is at a pace that is wonderful, right? Given how new we are as an industry. But, I definitely want to see much more industry growth. And Jeremy, here's a concern that I have, and I don't know if other people have it. Barely 12 years old, whether or not people hate Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or blockchain, it's here to stay. It is actually going to, the train has left and it's going to grow. But the crypto community has this burden, in my opinion. Who's going to actually take it to the next level, right? Because when you see entities like Visa or Fidelity or PayPal enter this space, it's because they know that they have the consumers. They want to take it to the marketplace. They want to give it mainstream adoption. And if the crypto community is not careful, right? All of these great exchanges we've built, all of these great organizations, companies, and products we've built, they will get overshadowed, run over, and the traditional financial industry will step in and they'll actually do the education. They'll connect to their consumers and they will actually grow the space. I remember when PayPal first, announced, that they're going to offer crypto, and they had the descriptions for the 6 cryptocurrencies that remember the whole uproar on crypto Twitter was like, this is ridiculous. And my thing was, PayPal they have to speak to a consumer that knows nothing about crypto, right? They have to test the language based on the consumer base they have, right? Because again, in crypto, we don't have a consumer base yet. We haven't carved our niche in the marketplace. So in the next 4 years, I would love to see the people who actually build crypto, which includes people of color who were there from the beginning, really look at how do we make sure we protect our market share and make sure we're not fighting and giving, the traditional financial institution an opportunity to come in and just take it.
Yeah, very good perspective as a startup that's been in the space for 7.5 years. I hope that is also what happens. Cleve, this has been really wonderful to have you on. Really appreciate your thoughts and insights, and looking forward to hopefully continued collaboration. Thank you again for joining us today. And
thank you for the opportunity to be here and to connect with your viewers and listeners. And thank you for the great work you're doing with Circle. I commend you on your commitment to financial inclusion and also to building a strong financial system for the world.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you very soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So some great perspective there from Cleve, and a really pivotal moment in policy, in crypto, in what mainstream adoption might look like over the next 4 years, and really a call to action on our industry to be more intentional about diversity, to be more intentional about education, and really the substance of what financial inclusion involves. So hopefully you all took some great perspective from that. Until next time, stay well, stay safe, and stay informed.